beautiful, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. This is yours truly, Mr. Panuka from here at Panuka Farm in Zambia. I hope you're having a good time. Here, it's quite a lovely day. The sun is just about an hour to setting. And yeah, always comes with that lovely, ambience to it. So I am in a, cabbage, field here, and I think we've actually presented this crop on our YouTube channel. You can actually just trace back and watch some of the other, old, videos when this crop was actually quite, young. So we just came out of winter, the cold season, and you know too well that brassicas are actually, very good friends, with winter. So we always, try and just squeeze in, a brassica, crop during, winter. Yeah, that's the name of the game in farming. you know, Trying to squeeze, something quick. If it actually grows, very well, during, that, period. And yeah, the crop is just about to get, ready. And so what I'll just do is to just walk you through, this crop, to see how lovely it looks, and just give you some, further, tidbits on how you get yourself such a lovely, crop, such as, what I have right behind me. So tag along. So what we have here is around 9 to 10,000, heads of cabbage that we transplanted just in the midst of the cold season, and this is how this crops look like at present. One thing that we can actually note, much as the cabbage is actually doing well, is that we probably squeezed this cabbage a bit. It's a bit too tight, but we're still getting some very decent heads that are coming up. Obviously, they don't get ready at the same time. So these are the kind of heads that are coming up, and the target is to have an average of about 5, kgs of heads. That is what sells with the kind of market that we are targeting. So something like this, getting bigger. You can see more heads there in the other, line coming up. More heads here. So with a bit more spacing, I think we'd have actually had much bigger and better sizes of, heads, but still produce quite some spectacular, cabbage, crop here. Still growing. And one thing that you actually note is that this crop, was produced with less, attack of what is called diamond, black moth. So diamond black moth basically manifests itself with a lot of holes on the leaves, but you can actually see these are scars from the time the crop was actually young. We managed to actually arrest this, diamond black moth, and so as this crop was actually growing, you'd actually see that we took full control in terms of just managing this DBM, and that's how we ended up with such a lovely, crop. So usually the head formation is not always uniform. We've got two varieties here. There's Mashadu by Rags One, as well as Kilimo. So we're already seeing some differences in the head formation. Yeah, but overall you can actually see some very lovely heads coming up with some very lovely foliage here. More heads still in formation stage. So there's need for a bit more of water at this stage of this crop. But obviously, as soon as the heads start to really form, you need to know when to withdraw the water to avoid, the rotting of cabbage. So it's something to watch you've got to, go around and make sure that you know, ensure that there's no rotting that's happening. Know when to, take off your foot in terms of irrigation, so that you end up with a very good, cabbage crop. So DBM, one of the biggest menaces. That's something that you've got to take care of. But also, you need to make sure that there's quite some very right, calcium balance to avoid having hollow, heads. That happens sometimes when you cut a cabbage. You find it's got some spaces. Usually that's a calcium imbalance, and that also leads to a lightweight, cabbage, head. So you want to make sure that there's a good calcium balance that creates a very compact, head, coupled with the right amount of water, and then you're off to a good, cabbage crop. So those are some of the critical, tidbits you've got to take care of. And like we indicated, also some right spacing. I think what we have here is a bit tight, but we fed it well, took care of it, and that's why we're still having some decent, heads, despite a bit of, too close, distance between the cabbage, plant stations. So yeah, that's your cabbage, that's our cabbage here, and how it's doing, thus far. And pretty soon, yeah, heading to the market. Like we indicated, this is kind of a one-off batch. We don't, proceed with cabbage, production during the summer. Obviously, this is a crop that is quite hungry on water. But again, it's not really part of our, perennial, crops. So, obviously, maybe one of the lingering, questions you'd be asking is, despite just the water issue, is cabbage not a profitable crop for you to actually do all year round? Apparently, it's actually a very profitable, crop that you can actually do all year round. Except, it's a numbers game kind of crop. You need to produce quite a bit. I think your batches must be something like this, like one batch. But again, remember, farming, especially horticulture farming, has three, aspects to it. Just like any other crop, price, the quantity that you produce, and obviously also the frequency at which you actually get to market. And so, if you're going to go into, cabbage production, the issue is that you probably need to put in this much, of a crop every week. Okay, 10,000 heads, and then take to market almost every week. Something like 5 to 10,000 heads. So it also chews quite a bit of land space. Then you're also looking at pressure on the water. But if you actually look at the offtake in terms of quantities that you can actually take to market, I would actually say cabbage is quite elastic, just like tomato. But obviously, it's a bit of noise in terms of pricing. But at the moment, I think the pricing is around, 5 kwacha from a Zambian perspective, and usually kind of remains there buoyant almost all year round. So if you want to go into cabbage farming, I think it's a profitable, crop to do. But take into account, I think, those nuances of the fact that you probably have to be putting in the ground, this much of cabbage every week. So remember, it's your necessary management, and then you've got to transplant, and then take care. So there's quite a bit of land that you actually need, and some very good irrigation, systems to actually do commercial, production of, cabbage. But it's a good crop. But just make sure that you understand those fundamentals that we've just highlighted. Yeah. So hope this has been a juicy, video that's given you a bit of insights in terms of just cabbage farming. That's if you're looking at it from, a longevity perspective in terms of, production. So from yours truly, Mr. Panuka, have a lovely one. Bye-bye.